It was a sweltering summer afternoon in Maplewood, a sleepy town where the air hung heavy with the scent of gasoline and sun-baked asphalt. Jack Thompson stood in the dim interior of his small garage, the clatter of tools and the hum of a struggling fan filling the space. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he wrestled with the rusted guts of Mrs. Jenkins' old Ford pickup, his grease-stained hands moving with practiced precision. The truck was a relic, much like its owner, but Jack couldn't bring himself to charge her full price or sometimes anything at all. He knew the sting of empty pockets too well. The fan sputtered, barely stirring the thick heat, when a bright voice cut through the noise. "Daddy?" Jack turned to see Lily, his 8-year-old daughter, framed in the doorway. Her blonde curls were pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her blue eyes shone with a light that never failed to lift his spirits. She shifted her backpack on her shoulder, the straps digging into her small frame. "Hey, sweetheart," Jack said, wiping his hands on a rag as a tired smile spread across his face. "How was school?" "It was okay," Lily replied, skipping toward him. "We learned about butterflies. Did you know they taste with their feet?" Jack chuckled, the sound rough but warm. "No, I didn't. That's pretty wild." "Yeah." Lily nodded, her enthusiasm infectious. "Can we go home now? I'm starving." Jack glanced at the clock, a cracked relic on the wall that read 5:30. Another day had slipped away. "Sure thing, kiddo. Let me clean up." He turned to the sink, catching his reflection in the chipped mirror. At 38, he looked older, lines carved deep into his forehead, shadows pooling under his eyes. Being a single dad was a grind, and the weight of it pressed harder with every bill that piled up. Lily had been born with a heart defect, a quiet thief that stole her energy and his peace. The doctors had recently pushed for surgery, saying it could give her a better life, but the cost, over $50,000, loomed like a mountain he couldn't climb. Insurance would cover some, but not enough. He scrubbed his hands harder as if he could wash away the fear gnawing at him. Shaking it off, he forced a grin. "All right, let's hit the road." They walked hand in hand to his battered pickup, the one he'd patched together from scrap and stubbornness. As they drove through Maplewood's quiet streets, Lily filled the cab with stories of her day, caterpillars and crayons, and Jack listened, clinging to the normalcy like a lifeline. Then, just past the old oak on Miller Road, they spotted a car skewed on the shoulder, its hazard lights blinking like a distress signal. A woman stood beside it, staring at a flat tire with a mix of frustration and defeat. "Daddy, should we help her?" Lily asked, her voice soft but insistent. Jack's shoulders sagged. He was bone-tired and dinner was already late. But those blue eyes, Lily's eyes, looked at him with quiet expectation. He couldn't say no. "Yeah, we should." He pulled over, gravel crunching under the tires, and stepped out. The woman looked up, her face softening with relief. She was older, maybe 50, with dark hair streaked with gray and a weariness that matched the slump of her shoulders. "Hi there," Jack said, tipping his head. "Need a hand with that tire?" "Oh yes, please," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm useless with this sort of thing." Jack offered a small smile. "No problem. I've got it." He grabbed the spare and tools from her trunk, the metallic clank echoing in the still air. Lily watched from the truck, her nose pressed to the window, as Jack knelt by the wheel. The woman, Margaret she said her name was, hovered nearby, her hands twisting together. "You're a lifesaver," she said, watching him work. "I was starting to think I'd be stuck here all night." "Just doing what anyone would," Jack grunted, loosening the lug nuts with a wrench. The sun beat down, sweat trickling into his eyes. "Do you live around here?" Margaret asked, her tone curious. "Yeah, few blocks away. I run Thompson's garage in town." "A mechanic?" "Then that explains it." Jack nodded, focused on the task. "Been at it since I was a kid." Margaret smiled faintly. "Lucky for me you drove by." He shrugged, swapping the flat for the spare. When he finished, Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a few crumpled bills. "Please take something for your trouble," she said. Jack waved her off, standing and wiping his hands. "Nah, it's fine. Glad you're sorted." "At least let me buy you a coffee," she pressed. "No need," he said firmly. "You take care." He climbed back into the truck, and as they pulled away, Lily piped up. "That was nice of you." "Daddy." Jack ruffled her hair. "Gotta help when you can, sweetie." He didn't give it another thought. But for Margaret, the moment stuck like a burr. Margaret sat in her car, the engine idling as Jack's truck faded into the distance. The air smelled faintly of rubber and dust, and her hands still shook from the ordeal. It wasn't just the tire, though that had been bad enough. It was everything else. The past year had been a slow bleed. Her husband Robert had died suddenly. Heart attack at 52, and the silence that followed had swallowed her whole. No kids, no close family, just a house too big and a job as a financial analyst that felt increasingly hollow. That afternoon she'd been driving nowhere, the road blurring through tears, wondering if there was any point to it all. When the tire blew, it was the last shove toward a dark edge. Then Jack showed up, a stranger with rough hands and a quiet kindness, asking nothing in return. It wasn't much, just a tire change. But it hit her like a lifeline. She gripped the steering wheel, a flicker of something waking inside her. Maybe there was still good out there. Maybe she could hold on. Days later, she stopped at a corner store, the bell jingling as she stepped inside. She grabbed a water bottle, then paused at the counter. A stack of lottery tickets sat by the register, their bright colors catching her eye. She wasn't a gambler, never had been, but something nudged her. "Why not?" she muttered, handing over $1. That night she sat in her living room, the TV flickering with the lottery drawing. She barely paid attention until the numbers rolled across the screen. 7, 14, 23, 38, 49, 12. Her ticket lay on the coffee table, and on a whim, she checked it. Then checked again. Her breath caught, a sharp gasp escaping her lips. They matched, all of them. $10 million. She sank onto the couch, the ticket trembling in her hands. The room spun, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, the weight of sudden impossible wealth. She should have felt joy, but it was overwhelm instead. What did you do with $10 million when you had no one to share it with? Then her mind drifted to Jack, his grease-streaked face, his refusal of her money, the way he'd shrugged off her thanks. He'd given her hope when she'd had none. Maybe she could give something back. The next morning, she drove to Maplewood, her heart thudding with purpose. Thompson's garage wasn't hard to find, a squat building with a faded sign, the roll-up door open to reveal Jack bent over a sedan. She parked across the street, watching him for a moment. He moved with a quiet intensity, but there was a slump to his shoulders, a weariness that mirrored her own. Steeling herself, she crossed the road, the gravel crunching under her shoes. "Excuse me, Jack." He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, and squinted at her. "Oh, hi, Margaret, right?" "Yes," she said, forcing a smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Nah, you're good. What's up?" She took a deep breath, the words tumbling out. "After you helped me with my tire, something incredible happened. I won the lottery. A lot of money." Jack's eyebrows shot up. "No kidding? That's wild. Congrats." "Thanks," she said, her voice catching. "But I didn't come to brag. I want to share it with you." He blinked, confusion creasing his face. "With me? Why?" "Because your kindness changed something for me," she said, stepping closer. "I was in a bad place that day, really bad. I'd lost my husband and I didn't know if I could keep going. Then you stopped to help me, no questions asked. It reminded me there's still good in the world. I want to pay it forward." Jack shook his head, backing up a step. "I appreciate that, but I can't take your money. I was just doing what anyone would. Not everyone would, she said firmly. And I heard about your daughter, Lily, right? That she needs surgery. I want to help with that. His face went still, a flicker of panic in his eyes. How'd you know about Lily? Small town, she said gently. Word gets around. I'm not prying, Jack. I just want to help. He ran a hand through his hair, grease smudging his forehead. I don't know what to say. It's too much. Please, she pressed. It's not charity. It's for Lily. She deserves a chance. Jack's throat bobbed, and he looked away, blinking hard. Lily's surgery had been a specter haunting him for months. Every overtime shift, every skipped meal, every night staring at the ceiling, calculating how to make it work. And now this woman, this stranger, was offering to lift that burden. I can't thank you enough, he rasped. You don't need to, Margaret said, her own eyes glistening. You already did. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Margaret coordinated with the hospital, covering Lily's surgery costs with a check that felt surreal in its zeros. She also pitched a plan to invest in Jack's garage, new equipment, a second bay, maybe even a hire or two. Jack balked at first, pride warring with practicality, but she framed it as a business move, not a handout. You've got talent, she told him. Let's make it grow. He relented, and soon the garage buzzed with new life. Fresh paint on the walls, the whine of a new lift, the chatter of a part-time mechanic named Eddie. But the real test loomed. Lily's surgery. The morning of the procedure, Jack sat in the EOM hospital waiting room, the antiseptic smell stinging his nose. The chairs were hard, the clocks ticked maddeningly slow. Margaret sat beside him, a quiet anchor in the storm of his nerves. She's strong, she said, squeezing his hand. Like her dad. Jack nodded, but his stomach churned. He'd lost Lily's mom, Sarah, to cancer 5 years ago, and the fear of losing Lily too was a shadow he couldn't shake. He'd failed to save Sarah. Too many late diagnoses, too little money. What if he failed Lily now? Hours crawled by, each minute a knife's edge. Then the doctor emerged, peeling off his mask. Surgery went well, he said, smiling. She's stable. You can see her soon. Jack's knees buckled, relief crashing over him like a wave. He turned to Margaret, tears streaming down his face, and pulled her into a hug. Thank you, he choked out. You've given us everything. She hugged him back, her voice thick. No, Jack. You gave me a reason to keep going. But Margaret wasn't done. A week later, as Lily recovered, her laugh echoing through the hospital room, Margaret unveiled a new plan. She'd been thinking, she said, about how Jack's kindness had rippled out. She wanted to amplify it. So she organized a community event at the town hall, a night to honor everyday heroes. Jack was the centerpiece, though he didn't know the half of it. The night arrived, the hall aglow with string lights and the hum of voices. Jack stood awkwardly in a borrowed blazer, Lily beside him in a new dress, her cheeks pink with excitement. Margaret took the stage, microphone in hand, and the room hushed. I was lost, she began, her voice steady but raw. A year ago, I lost my husband, and I didn't know how to go on. Then one day my tire blew out and I was ready to give up, on everything. That's when Jack Thompson stopped to help me. Jack shifted, heat creeping up his neck as eyes turned to him. He didn't know me, Margaret continued. He didn't ask for anything. He just helped. And that night I bought a lottery ticket, something I never do. I won $10 million. A gasp rippled through the crowd, murmurs swelling. But here's the thing, she said, her gaze locking on Jack. That money didn't save me, Jack did. I was about to end it all that day, really end it. His kindness pulled me back. So tonight, I'm not just thanking him. I'm starting a foundation to help single parents like him, starting with Lily's medical fund. Jack's jaw dropped, his breath catching. Suicide? He hadn't known. couldn't have known the depth of her despair. The room spun as the crowd erupted in applause, people rising to their feet. Lily tugged his sleeve, whispering, "Daddy, you're a hero!" He pulled her close, tears blurring his vision. Margaret stepped down, joining them, and the three stood together as strangers approached, some with handshakes, others with stories of their own. A woman Jack had given a free oil change to last year. A man whose car he'd towed for free after a breakdown. Small acts he'd forgotten now reflected back at him. Later, under the stars outside, Jack watched Lily twirl with other kids, her laughter a melody he'd feared losing. Margaret stood beside him, her face peaceful. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. "Yes, I did," she replied. "You showed me what matters. I'm not alone anymore." He nodded, a lump in his throat. His life, once a tightrope of despair, had widened into something bigger, something hopeful. One tire, one moment, had changed everything. In a world where kindness is often overlooked, a single act can change lives in ways we never imagine.